Roll call, please.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Linda Gonzalez, alternate.
District 2, Supervisor Church. District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Present.
District 4, Supervisor Askew. District 5, Supervisor Adams. Alternate Courtney. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Yeah.
City of Del Reyes. City of Gonzales.
Here.
City of Greenfield. City of King City.
Present.
City of Marina.
Present.
City of Monterey.
Present.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas.
Present.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside. City of Soledad.
Yep.
Ambag.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Here.
Monterey Bay Air Resource District. Monterey Regional Airport District. Monterey Salinas Transit.
Here. Sorry.
City of Watsonville. CSUMB.
Here.
Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you join me in the pledge of allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to public comments. Is there any member of the public on any item that's not on the agenda? Please. And who has the clock?
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to address the board today on the Highway 68 project. I'm Dwight Stump, and as a resident of Corral Beach area, I travel that 8-mile stretch of 68 frequently. After attending the July open house, reading the TAMC project fact sheet, and communicating often with Doug Wilson, I started to really research roundabouts and the situation on 68 over the next few months. I found that a number of claims on the fact sheet were misleading or false, like the claim that 9 roundabouts will, quote, decrease emergency response time. Being from a background of sales and marketing, I also saw that there were no negatives presented for the roundabouts. They seemed perfect, but you know that can't be true. I read that according to TAMC and Caltrans, the 9 proposed roundabouts were projected to reduce the peak commute time, which is only about 4 hours per weekday, by only 5 minutes and cost over $200 million. And I thought there must be a better way. After speaking with Doug about adaptive signal operation, I did some online research on artificial intelligence controls or traffic signals and found that the technology had been used since 2012 and was producing better results than the claims for the roundabouts. I wondered why that option had not even been considered by Caltrans or TAMC, since it cost significantly less, only about $180,000 to $400,000 total, depending on detection hardware, and could be installed immediately. I contacted MyoVision, which is one of the leaders in this technology, and they provided more information, case studies, and independent articles describing the results of their system. I have put that information in a document that I sent to the board on Monday, and I think all of you have. And I also included information in that document on the negative impacts of having 9 roundabouts in 8 miles on a busy highway, which I don't believe you realize or have seen before. I am requesting that you read it thoroughly to gain another perspective before continuing with the promotion of roundabouts. I was told by Doug that AI signal controls would not require additional environmental impact reports since it would be using existing signals and intersections. Vision is also making themselves available to do a Zoom meeting with Doug and Roger Barnes, the senior transportation engineer at Caltrans, to review their technology and what it can do for this project. So as an involved resident and taxpayer, I request that you support this evaluation of a technology that could give better results at a fraction of the cost and be more compatible with future needs and technology. Thank you, and I'll remain after the meeting if anyone has questions for me.
Thank you. Is there other members of the public who speak on any item not on the agenda? Is there anyone here online? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Is there any members of the board who like to pull any of the items from the consent agenda? Is there any member of the public who like to speak on any of the consent agenda items? And I'll ask any members of the public who like to speak on any of the consent agenda items. Hearing and seeing none, I'll bring this back to the board for action.
Lopez moves consent.
Second, first for Lopez, second Alejo, roll call please. Are any members online? No?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain. Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Move on to item 4. To present the transportation agency employees in accordance with anticipatory budgeting team of Aaron Hernandez, Ariadne, I'm sorry if I messed that up, Zambrano, Ariana Green, and Yannicka Strauss. Todd?
Thank you. It's hereby certified that Aaron Hernandez, Ariadne Zambrano, Ariana Green, Yannicka Strauss have been selected by their colleagues at the Transportation Agency for Monterey County as employees of the quarter for July 1st through September 30th, 2023. The agency employees recognize the participatory budgeting team, Aaron, Ariadne, Ariana, and Yannicka, for their professionalism, positive attitude, and their hard work developing the Salinas Valley Safe Route to School plan for 22 schools in the cities of Greenfield, Soledad, Gonzales, and King City. The team worked hard gathering inputs from parents, teachers, students, and school administrators. The community recommended projects to make biking and walking to school safer and more comfortable. On behalf of the board of directors and staff of the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, it is our great pleasure to recognize Aaron, Ariadne, Ariana, and Yannicka for their exemplary service.
Congratulations.
We don't obviously normally recommend more than one person per employee at a quarter, but this team has been working incredibly hard with quite a few night meetings and off-hour meetings to deliver this project, and we felt it was really appropriate for all of them to be recognized. Take a picture over here.
And after we do the picture, I'll give the opportunity for the board to make any comments. We're gonna stand in front of this.
Okay.
I was wondering where she was.
Right there. I think that's a good view.
Yeah.
One more. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, anybody who would like to make any comments? Start with Chris, then Christina.
Just want to give appreciation, honestly, in our communities, we continue to struggle to safe routes to school. Just this week, we had another pedestrian vehicle accident. I felt that when I was able to respond to a community member who reached out concerns, and we developed a plan and we have recommendations from the community. So this work out. It put their mind more at ease and give her something to write on. And said, I need a copy of that. I want to drive some of those issues home. So thank you for giving our community that platform to stand on and bring change. Those issues that face are long-standing, but now you've given us critical tools. So this is well deserved honor. Thank you all for your work.
I also want to say thank you very much. And I'm especially proud of this team because they're homegrown. Ariande is from Marina, my town, and I know her family. We found out which the school that my kids went to. So she's been a product of our local school districts, who's gone off to college and come back, as well as Dr. Hernandez over here. And I don't know too much about the other one, but I'm really proud of this team. And if we could support local talent like we're doing, I don't know if we have internship opportunities, but I really appreciate that they're here and working and improving our communities that they're from. I think that speaks a lot about our agency and back to our leadership team under Todd to recognize the talent and keep giving them a chance. So I really want to give you kudos for coming back. I'm sure your families are happy to have you, and our communities are thrilled that you are here because you walk the streets, you know the traffic patterns, you have that insight that you're able to bring to the job, and I think that's hit the ground running. And I'm really honored that you chose us. So. Thanks.
Any other board members? And I'll just add to that, those great words from both Chris and Christina. And you did an amazing job getting the community together. I know I attended a couple of meetings, just blown away of how many individuals, especially, I'll probably mess the word up again, participatory budgeting work that you did. And I was just really glad to see how you did it in Spanish first, English translation. I thought that was an amazing component that really brought in a lot of feedback. That benefits our agency, but also benefits some projects within the community. So awesome job. Thank you, everyone. All right, now we'll move on to item 5, the state transit and zero emission funding project candidates. I will hand this off to Alyssa.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for being here. My name is Alyssa Gucher, transportation planner, and today I will be presenting an overview of the Senate Bill 125 funding program, as well as the proposed funding project distribution, and to be followed by a discussion as well as action items to be taken by the board. On July 10th, 2023, the governor signed Senate Bill 125 into law, which included a new formula funding through the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program and created a new zero emission transit capital program. The legislative intent covers a range of goals, including funding high priority bus and rail transit capital projects, providing transit operations bridge funding for transit operators to address operational costs until long-term transit sustainability solutions are identified, assisting those transit operators in preventing service cuts and increasing ridership, prioritizing the availability of transit for riders who are transit dependent, and prioritizing transit agencies representing a significant percentage of the region's ridership. According to the Senate Bill 125 guidelines, the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCIP, formula funds can be used for high priority bus and rail transit capital projects consistent with uses allowed in cycle 6, which is the most recent cycle of the TIRCIP program, which includes existing capital projects, project development for major projects, or new TIRCIP eligible projects. The SB 125 guidelines outline the process for selection of eligible capital projects to reflect that in most cases, existing TIRCIP funded capital projects that are already substantially funded and in need of additional resources for completion are expected to be prioritized over beginning new projects. The zero emission transit funding can be used for zero emission transit equipment, including but not limited to zero emission vehicles and refueling infrastructure. Senate Bill 125 funds can also be used for transit operating expenditures subject to compliance with the requirements under the guidelines. For the funding distribution, TAMC is responsible for programming 44,492,239 in TIRCP funds over 2 years and 7,983,565 in zero emission transit capital project funding over a 4-year timeline. There is no time limit or deadline for expenditure of these funds once TAMC has received funding. You can see here, administrative expenses are allowed up to a limit of 1% of the total funding allocation. For TAMC, that is $524,758, and that will be included in the first year of the zero emission transit capital projects allocation. So upon the CalSTA approval of TAMC's proposed funding plan, the funding will be paid in advance to TAMC by fiscal year, and that will be distributed first in March of 2024, July of 2024, then through 2025 and 2026. And I can provide those numbers if requested. So, as for the administration of the funds, by December 31st, 2023, TAMC must submit compiled transit operator data and determine whether funds will be applied to transit operations either in fiscal year 23 or 24, or prior to the end of fiscal year 26 through 27. And the submission of transit operator data must be consistent with adopted guidelines. If funds are to be applied to transit operations in fiscal year 23-24, then TAMC must submit a short-term financial plan and a maximum of 1% of total multi-year funding, or just shy of $525,000, as I mentioned before, may be programmed for administration of funding and expenses related to developing the long-term financial plan. That funding will be distributed as needed to TAMC and MST staff, as we will be coordinating closely on the distribution of these funds. Then we'll also be using those administrative funds for CalSTA reporting. Now on to the recommended action. So as approved by the Executive Committee on November 1st and supported by the Real Policy Committee on November 6th, the proposed funding distribution would take 1% off the top for administrative expenses and allocate 50% of the remaining funds to MST for priority bus projects and 50% to TAMC for priority rail projects, with additional Measure X funding covering the current estimate for SURF busway and bus rapid transit project construction costs, as demonstrated here in the chart. So the allocation of these new Measure X funds to the SURF project is recommended to be contingent upon the approval of this proposed 50-50 split. This proposal provides the opportunity to leverage the Measure X and SB 125 funds to fund real projects while meeting 67% of MST's funding request. This slide reflects the TAMC share of almost $26 million based on the proposed 50-50 split. TAMC's approach for this 50% of the SB 125 funds is to flex the spending between Pajaro and Watsonville Multimodal Station, the Monterey County Rail Extension Project, including positive train control, and the King City Station. Staff is proposing using SB 125 funding for project phases not eligible or typically not competitive for grants to better position these rail projects where they are competitive. The initial allocation package request document due by the end of this month may be limited to Pajaro, Watsonville Multimodal Station, and Monterey County Rail Extension projects, as both of these projects are existing TIRCP awarded projects and therefore would require far less documentation and would be automatically eligible for the TIRCP funds. And we are currently working with King City and Caltrans to confirm the documentation of that project's eligibility for future TIRCP funds. This slide shows the proposed Monterey Salinas Transit projects, and attached to this staff report are both MST's original request letter detailing these projects, as well as the revised request letter dated November 14th. So the first one was October 13th, second letter dated November 14th. In both letters, MST is requesting the total funding available and subtracts the administrative costs. So this chart also reflects that the second request letter that MST sent merges the electric bus charging infrastructure into the SURF project's construction costs and combines the two hydrogen projects into one larger project. So today we are recommending these 4 actions for this item. And the project funding distribution that is to be decided can be revised. So as the SB 125 guidelines allow TAMC to have complete authority to alter the projects that use these SB 125 funds. They just require confirmation from CalSTA, and that's able to be done within kind of a month turnaround. In the event a project becomes significantly delayed, TAMC could move funding from one project to another priority project. Similarly, if a project succeeds in a grant application and no longer needs the SB 125 funding, another project can be moved up and replace that project in the priority list. So this flexibility is documented in the recommended board action that includes evaluating potential changes to SB 125 programming annually when updating the agency's integrated funding strategy, or even more frequently if grant funding opportunities arise. That concludes the overview of my presentation. I thank you all for your time, and I'll leave this slide up.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right, board members, we'll start with questions or comments.
Sure.
Yes.
For the MST projects, did MST give input on those, or was that TAMC staff looking at what projects they're already considering?
The project list from MST was provided by MST, yes.
Other questions or comments? Yes, I have a question.
I was talking to Todd yesterday, and I know for me, rail, the long-term vision for rail sounds great. Just the investment in these dollars to something that's going to serve potentially more people in the future, as opposed to our current population now, is a bit of concern to me. So I wanted to just express that because, as we build this infrastructure, we don't have a commitment from the rail lines that we'll be able to use these stations, or that will be a service area. Is that correct?
We have a memorandum of agreement understanding with Caltrain to work on future service. So that's the extent of their commitment towards it. And we also are in the state rail plan for long-term, for near-term and long-term service. So all of the projects that TAMC is working on, including the extension of service to Salinas, is part of that.
And which rail or MST do you think will serve more underserved communities? I mean, which will get the most value for and be able to provide the most service for our underserved communities?
That's a policy decision within the board. All of the stations happen to be located in the underserved communities, so they're directly benefiting based on the location of the stations. But as far as future ridership, I don't have that information right now. And as far as comparison, I don't know.
Yeah, I recognize that they're in underserved communities. I just, the amount of people that will use it or will be impacted daily is one of my questions. I guess you don't have the data for that, but.
And that's a good question too. I will point out as well as, as the transportation agency for Monterey County, and MST does an amazing job on the bus side. I think, there's an equity aspect there are many regions that have more opportunities when it comes to public transit, both bus and rail. And I just hope that our board considers that it's beneficial to our residents. And we do house the farm workers. We have a lot of families that are low income. And I firmly believe they deserve the same opportunities as other regions. You know, not just to be locked into only one type of public transit. Rail is an important component to accessing all of California. Bus is an important component to accessing a region, and they work well together. So I hope you consider that aspect, because this really is about equity. Because a lot of times we just don't get the funding for our communities because the bigger ones get it. They have more high-powered lobbyists. We have an excellent lobbyist, so we're lucky. But I would just consider the equity aspect of it. I mean, our residents deserve both, just like in other communities. It shouldn't always be the rich communities that get these opportunities.
Right. I know.
Oh, go ahead. Were you finished?
No, I appreciate that. You know, there's just so much need across the board that, you know, it's difficult to be in a position where we have to pick and choose something for the future or something that could serve those same communities now, or maybe not now, because these are projects that are going to take time. But yeah,
I want to second the chair's comments here as well, because I think it's not just giving the residents opportunities of other travel, perhaps going to the Bay Area, which now is more of an expense and a challenge onto there, and having opportunities up there, but also as economic opportunities for businesses. You know, just yesterday we're talking about $20 million to borrow the board supervisors, and one thing that came up is how these businesses are separate. They just scheme of help, they don't get anything, and this just brings another group into. I don't know where the other stations are down the valley of King City or where they've been on in, but it gives an opportunity to bring in more people that might give some economic revitalization to communities that really don't have that aren't getting an influx of funds from the outside. So it's sort of it's an investment. It's an investment into the future. Mr. Chair, questions.
Chris, Fernando, thank you.
So a couple questions. One, up there as well, was charging infrastructure. Was that just for buses or was that for vehicles, personal vehicles? Just bus trade. The proposal or what the eligibility of funds?
For the
Overall.
funding guidelines, it's for transit operators, so not.
So under the MST projects, I just have a question. I think under those, is there any expansion of service within communities beyond the surf construction, which would speed up? I mean, I see change in different pieces, but is there actual expansion of routes beyond the fixed route?
I'd like let Carl answer the question. If I may, there are some comments that MST has prepared, and I can respond to that when I do that, or do you want an answer to that specific question right now, or I can wrap it in?
I'd love a question. I'd love an answer to the question right now.
So the operations piece, the $29.1 million is the current projected deficit that MST has.
Yeah, but the question is there expansion of service?
No, what this is for is to prevent cutting of service.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Fernando, and then Chris Colon, and then Luis.
So I was just wondering about the volume part and looking at the numbers from the MST. So all these numbers are to prevent losing services, right?
The $29.1 million is to prevent losing service. The rest of the funding is to comply with state mandates for zero emission buses, which ostensibly new buses cost less to operate and maintain, so they do help in maintaining service because we're not spending more on maintaining old buses.
And then in the other slide with the TAMC, so this is not providing service in the present. In most cases, it's in the future, and we don't have, if I heard correctly, we don't have a contract with Caltrans to start services. So I'm wondering if this is for the future. And I see Pajaro Station, and I travel several times to Pajaro. I don't see any railroad that we can use, so that means that we're gonna build something right there, right?
There's an existing railroad.
Oh, there is?
Yes.
Okay,
Williams
so,
Road.
so
It's right, it's right off the road.
it's a question.
No, it's a good
It's a question, right? So, I wonder if the investment of this money is better used in present services. Because, yes, I looked at that, but I was looking at the letter they sent, MST sent, and in the South County, we only have one service, one line. So we're talking about affecting 4 communities: Chular, Gonzales, Soledad, Greenfield, 5 with Kansas City. So we're affecting 5 communities for a future services that it will probably take 5 years.
And I want to respond to that. I disagree with that assessment, how you're reading it. Our service for our communities is not going to be affected.
So it's not,
It would have to be the board of MST to remove those services as a policy decision. And I would be hard pressed to see the members from Salinas, Gonzales, Soledad, Greenfield, and King City to vote against removing service from there. So honestly, that should not be consideration, but I understand where you're getting at. Should also point out that Soledad's rail station, whenever they feel like they wanted to pursue that, is in the state rail plan as well. Because the state has recognized the importance of equitable distribution of funds and equitable opportunities, and that our region has been underserved for way too long. And so we should also I'd ask you just to consider is the fact is, if you do not make investments, nothing will ever happen and nothing will ever change. And it's important to this group our basic job is making investments for the future, so that in the future it's better. We know how long projects take. So just consider that as well. Yes, thank you.
but I also consider that if you say the investment for the future, it's better to do investment for the future or for the present. I'm trying to understand the whole
Yeah,
thing.
oh, no, I would point out that many of the MST, I sit on the MST board. I absolutely support the work they do. I have a great relationship with Carl. But there are projects on the MST list, there are in the future as well. CERT is probably the closest one to completion and one of the most important near-term ones. The operations is important. I agree with that. But can't remember the name, the emission reduction charging systems. There, the hydrogen fuel cell, those are in its infancy as they're working forward. And also both on TAMC side and on MST side, these dollars are not the panacea. We are going to still continue out going for grants. And that's what's an amazing portion of these dollars, how flexible they are. So even in allocation, let's say for operations, what if in 2 years, the state finally recognizes they need to step up their game and actually fund transit like it should be? And the operations is covered. Those operational dollars can then be flexed over really quickly. And grants usually don't do that to one of the other priorities, and vice versa with TAMC as well. So the one thing I think is important for the board to consider is that the package brings in the dollars. So we provide a package that will be approved by CalSTA. Is it CalSTA?
Yes.
Cal stuff. The dollars will come in. And then what I liked about the staff recommendation was the annual review, so that we can constantly adjust those dollars as needed, because normally grant, we all know, grant dollars are so damn specific. I'm talking too long. Colleen, Luis, and then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. When this item was before the executive committee, I reviewed it and thought that the 50-50 split contingency with the additional funding towards MST for the CERT project seemed well thought out with the projects included, and that it would be a good balance between rail and transit. And Alyssa had mentioned the legislative intent at the beginning of her presentation. And I would like to maybe kind of tag on to what has been said earlier about the legislative intent for ridership. And so after talking with Supervisor Adams, we're a little bit conflicted, because I think the money coming into this county is going to be spent well. And it's also a tough balance, because it seems like the ridership piece for the operational costs is what the legislative intent is very specific on. And then also there's this opportunity to invest in these really important rail projects. So I bring up the legislative intent again, because that's something that was brought to our attention. And I hope this board will consider it. Although I will just preface by saying, I think the option put forward is still a great option for us to approve. So I don't have any questions, but I'm curious how others on the board feel about that legislative intent piece.
I'm sorry, can I clarify that? The legislative intent was, the transit funding shortfall was the overarching discussion at the state legislature when they adopted this. But we've sat down and met with Chennis and the deputy director at CalSTA. And I'm not sure with all the acronyms, it's California State Transportation Agency, which is one of the governor's cabinet offices. It's the agency that oversees Caltrans and CHP and DMV. It's like the overarching agency above those other state agencies. The secretary of CalSTA, Stokes Omashakin, we've met with them 3 times since all of this has come about. And while the operating fund shortfall is urgent around the state, it's different amongst different transit operators around the state. And there were other issues that came up related to other needs for transit. And that is the reason why they put the money into the TIRSIP formula and the zero emissions formula, and gave it to the regional transportation planning agencies like TAMC around the state, so that we can make local decisions based on our needs. So there are multiple high priority issues, and they gave the board the authority to decide what's a priority to the agency for our region. And it is unprecedented that they're allowing us to program projects and then change them later, get the money and change it later, and then shift as our needs might change. So we are in this position that's very unusual and very fortunate to be able to make some changes later on if conditions change. But I did want to just respond to the legislative intent comment.
That's really helpful to hear. Thank you.
Luis, then Ian, and then Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank our TAMC staff and the thoughtfulness that went in putting this proposal forward, both from the executive committee and then in the rail committee. And the reason TAMC has a rail committee is because we've been committed, this agency has been committed to rail for many years. And in fact, we have prioritized extending passenger rail from San Jose to Salinas. And the reason that we have these improvements at the Salinas Rail Yard is because we've made those investments. And we're trying to increase ridership by carrying out the Power Road train station and perhaps a future one in Castroville and now in King City and along the South County rail corridor. But we know when it comes to rail that if it's going to be sustainable, we have to make investments to increase ridership. That's where we have these points of connectivity so that we could have ridership and so that it is sustainable in the future. The reason we had our first meeting ever with the transportation agency in Santa Cruz County just a few weeks ago was because we know our future of rail is connected even with Santa Cruz County. It was a great, very productive first meeting of its kind there. But we also know that in the state high-speed rail, our closest connection point is in Gilroy. And so this project is also aimed to connect with that once that project is completed and we have that connection point in that city. But I want to speak also to the investment in disadvantaged communities because it's talked a lot about, but it's moments like these where we put our actions where we're. And for me to see that this agency has prioritized rail, and now we have these potential projects in King City, the continued efforts in Salinas, and now the community of Pajaro, which has historically been neglected. This is telling Pajaro, you are a priority, and having a train station there in the future is going to be a game changer for that community. Not only to have that connection point for rail transit, but also better connection points with our transit through MST that passes right through there. And also investments in the community to bring more businesses, bring road improvements, and have a different vision for that community. This is that moment where you have some limited resources, but where we can really make something, that project move forward in a real way. This wish list from MST as an MST board member, and first of all, I just want to point out this letter didn't come from the board. We didn't take this position stated in this letter, although it says it is from the board of directors. It is not. This wish list that's up there as an MST board member is what we desire. This is one-time monies. Some of these efforts, there's going to be other funding opportunities in the state budget. So it's not all our eggs are not in one basket here. There is other opportunities to address these. In terms of deficits, we haven't had an extensive discussion even at MST about that. And every agency, we look at our own strategic reserves that we have. If there is an issue there, we still haven't had that full discussion at our board. And we're trying to make it seem like it's either this money to solve that problem, when we haven't had a full discussion on how to address any shortcomings. But I do want to talk to the legislative intent as a former legislator, because I think that's not being portrayed accurately. And I thank our staff for making those clarifications. But if the state legislature didn't want any of these funds to be used for rail, they could have easily defined that in the budget bill. They didn't do that. They did provide us that flexibility to make these kind of decisions. And so I just want to make that point as well. But for me, I think this was a fair proposal, not only to propose splitting the funding, but also I think the staff are also looking creatively at our Measure X money to provide the additional 9.2 million to help MS2 address some of these other goals that they have stated on this list. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just appreciate what the supervisor said. He covered all my points, but so I have to twist it up a little bit. First thing, this is an investment in the future, right? That's what we're here for. And then I want to get quickly a little short piece about MST. We're not here to find extra money to shift to MST beyond their priorities, right? This is what they're asking for. So us just finding extra money and then saying, well, use it, but then you have to use it the way we want you to use it. And I don't know how that messes with their strategic planning, right? So I get we want to expand MST services, but that's a discussion that MST need to have. I see investment. I tell my community all the time, I want them, what we're doing here is for you to be able to get on the bus, take that bus somewhere to a central location and get on the rail and take that rail to Sacramento and down to LA, right? Wherever it goes. And I put it that way. So you guys hear it is, rail is coming through the Central Coast. It's coming through our county. If we're not planning on connecting to it, then it's going to still go through, right? And so that's what they're asking. That's what the state needs us to invest in now. So 5, 6, 10 years from now, they can plan on these stations at these different communities. And right now, we know they need that injection of money. And I do see it's more than just people, it is economics, right? We know these rail stations will allow business people to travel back and forth and get out and do their businesses. So I'm very supportive of the balance. It's just, we have to remember that rail is coming through. And if we don't have a plan to connect to it, then it'll just go through, it won't stop. And so, yeah, this money could be used for today, it could be used to, to get some of our residents from the grocery store to work and all of that stuff. But some of those same residents want to get on the bus and get on the rail and go to Sacramento with their family. Or get on the rail and go to Sacramento or Oakland or San Jose for the, for the airport, right? It's just those things that we don't have when you talk about underserved communities. Then a rail is part of that to travel one of the biggest states in this nation, coast to coast, end to end. And I just think we need to think about that, even though we don't receive the results now, because someone 15, 20 years ago, and Luis was in there, and Supervisor Lopez, and I know Supervisor Potter was part of that. They plan on some things we're doing 12 years ago, 15 years ago, right? So we may not see it now, we may not see an impact now, but our residents will feel it, where they're able to get on the closest bus, get a pass, ride a transfer, go to a local rail station, whether it's Salinas or some other part of our county, and maybe able to go down to San Diego or up to Oregon border. Good points. Carl, did you have?
Yeah, as an ex officio, I wanted to wait till the members have a chance to speak before.
Go ahead, Carl, and then I'll come back to members.
Certainly. So a couple things. First, I'd like to address some of the comments I've heard and position that staff heard from the MST board at our last meeting with regard to these projects that generated the letter from our board chair. And then I do have a Chair Velasquez is flying at the moment. She has about a 2.5-minute statement that she'd like me to read, and that's allowed. And then finally, let me, if I may, that's what I'd like to cover. Is that all right? Sure. First, I would just I'd like to preface the statement before I read it as far as staff's position. MST board met last month. And we discussed these projects. We've been in ongoing discussions with TAMC since the beginning of this, and we've made it clear that, well, first of all, let's just say that MST supports rail. MST has provided letters of support for all of these projects, and we will continue to do so. MST supports rural communities. We're the first ones into Pajaro to offer free services. We're continuing to offer free services today, and that's part of our ongoing budget for the remainder of the year. And we continue to provide services in our South County community. So please don't position this as it's a bus versus rail or urban versus rural services, because MST does, I think, is known to support. MST's concern is solely about making certain that this body invests the money with legislative intent in mind. For two reasons, we think it's important to follow legislative intent. Secondly, less than half of the money has been appropriated by the state. When the California Transit Associations and transit operators lobbied extensively for this, the state chose to fund transit operating deficits and programs to increase ridership and to cut, to stop services from being cut over many other priorities: mental health, housing, water issues. So there's still another 53% to be allocated. And our concern is that, MST's concern is that if we don't cover the basics with this allocation, one being the MST operating budget deficit that is included in our board adopted budgets and some of our zero emission bus unfunded needs and unfunded mandates that are included in the MST adopted zero emission bus transformation plan that's been adopted by the state. All of these positions are in board supported items and documents the board has taken. And MST feels like we're working with you all in good faith on this. And our concern is that we want to see the basics of the SB 125 met so that we can be assured that the next allocation of funding will be made, because we don't want the legislators to feel that there was a bait and switch involved. We pled poverty as a transit operator, and yet we didn't get our basic operating needs met. With that, I do have, after this is all done, and if the board is interested in, if there is a board member interested in hearing it, MST has a compromise solution. The MST board at our meeting in November, when we discussed this, directed staff to continue to advocate for our projects. Matter of fact, there was one member who sits on both the MST board and the TAMC board who said it was his expectation, their expectation, I don't want to say who this was, it was their expectation that the CEO swing for the fences for MST, but let's do so in a win-win fashion. So I'm prepared to offer an alternative that is more of a win-win fashion that MST believes better meets the intent of SB 125. With that, I'd like to read Chair Velasquez's comments. I think we have 2.5 minutes.
The chair's comments, we're doing her public comments and she's not here.
Okay.
And then I do want to remind the board, so I sit on MST and I'm also TAMC's chair. When the MST board had the discussion, it was my view, I wanted MST board to have a full discussion without me trying to bias their decision in that process. And I will say, I kind of expected the same respect from the MST chair, but we can do her comments at public comment. Because I firmly believe that my input at that board meeting probably would have been improper because I'm the chair of TAMC. So, but we'll add that. Are you finished with any?
Certainly, I do have a compromise solution that at an appropriate time, if someone wants to hear it, I can offer that up. And it's probably, it's a little less than what MST needs for all of our projects and a little less than what TAMC is suggesting.
I do want to ask this though. So at the board meeting, part of also the MST's direction was for you to work with Todd.
Mhm.
Did you bring this up to Todd beforehand? Because I am a little concerned. We'll hear it, but this should have been a conversation prior to this meeting and not at the meeting.
I've had numerous meetings with Todd, in a meeting with CalSTEP where we attempted to discuss alternatives to the 50-50 proposal. I've made it clear that he had policy direction from both his rail policy committee and from his executive committee, and was not in a position to deviate from that. I took that as he has his, and as a CEO, he has his orders, right? And so I look at this board as the opportunity now to make that, because I felt that Todd was legitimately in a policy, constrained by direction that he'd already been given. So I didn't feel personally that he had any opportunity to entertain that. And that was my take on the situation based on the comment that was made.
I can understand that. But I would have preferred conversation after the MST board meeting to at least broach the subject. But and this is whatever we do, the thing is MST and TAMC will always have an amazing relationship. This board, I will say, has always had the foresight to look at investments into the future of what's best for our communities. And this board is one that, look, I've gone to many conferences. I've heard some horror stories about other agencies throughout California and this country. And it's nothing but politics and bickering. So thank God we're not there. This will be a tough conversation, but I know at the end of the day, we'll all still be friends. But I'm trying to think, I'd rather have.
Well, through the chair, just to ask. So our friendship is on the line? Is that
No. I don't want anyone online or anyone thinking, even though that seems tough.
I asked you that, right, to as a segue to move away from that, right? Because I think we have our understanding of what our job is as TAMC members, right? And so we have staff recommendation. I can understand why MST may not appreciate that or agree with staff recommendation, but I don't think this is the first time any of us have been in this situation.
Yeah.
Right. So we should just move our policies.
Yeah. So Dave, you want to go?
Sure, I just asked Todd, though, first, Todd, is there anything that would preclude what Carl suggested with the proposal coming forward in the
No, the board has flexibility to make changes in the future. As you know, up to the point the money spent. So there will be a point when funds might be committed to a grant match or something, and that would be reflected in our recommendation to that point to the board. But everything else can be changed in the future based on the circumstances.
I appreciate that clarification. So as somebody who was the father of the rail program, I'm now the grandfather of the rail program. About 30 years ago, when I was a rookie on the commission here, and I looked at the branch line and I thought, there's an opportunity to go ahead and acquire this branch line. So I got the direction from all the communities to go ahead and be the negotiator with Union Pacific. I went and met with a guy by the name of what was his name? Rick Gooch in San Francisco. And I came back with a proposal. We have Prop 172 monies, go ahead and acquire the land with. And we went ahead and bought the line. We stole it, actually. We bought the line from Castro all the way down to the city of Monterey. We bought the utility rights. We bought the advertising billboards out. We got the property. We haven't had it for many years now. So when we bought it, it was with the intent to return the old Del Monte to the peninsula. Now that was a little naive on my part, and I realized later on that perhaps we should go where we could get better service, where the regular service was more needed, where we had potential for more ridership. So I said, and the Peninsula Cities agreed, Ian, you did a good job of synopsing what happened. We all said, okay, we can wait for service to maybe go to light rail down the branch line. But so we went ahead and said, we'll go ahead and make Salinas our destination for the service, realizing that it had the main line going there. So that was about 20 years ago that we bought the line. Since then, now Union Pacific is abandoned it, it's not ours. But Carl is using the line to go ahead for the service program, which is good. There's a benefit to that purchase, but right now, that I think is going under recognized. But the fact of the matter is that we bought the line for rail service to the peninsula. We're now able to use it for transit service. I think MST has benefited from that purchase. It's about a $15 million. I think, Chris, you know what it? And that's good. So anyway, so what I'm saying now is that we've got a chance to go ahead and really bring this plan to fruition. We've got the Pajaro station, which is important, that serves Castroville. We got the Castroville station, which serves an underserved community. We've got Salinas, we've got the station down in King City. We've been members of the Coast Rail Coordinating Council for almost 30 years. That's a joint effort to go ahead and have rail service connecting the missing link in the coastal corridor is Monterey County. I think this is a good time to move forward with the project. Sorry to see us bickering over money. I'm not really bickering, but trying to divide what we get here. I think we can do this together. We do it cooperatively. I don't think our relationship is jeopardy. I just think it's a good time to move forward. So that said, I'd be willing to make a moment.
Okay, got a motion?
Move the staff recommendation.
Public comment.
Yeah, I know, enough.
But we do have a motion, so a second to that.
Second.
Second, by Luis.
Question
So,
down here, Jeff.
yeah, we're gonna, since it already has happened, we're gonna finish any more comments or questions. And then I'll go to the public.
Thank you. I want to start by saying I really appreciate how simple this conversation is. I think we all walk into so many of these spaces when we're trying to, look at one really important critical issue and another really important critical issue, and there really is, we need money for all of them. So I appreciate everyone in this room right now. And I think that I'm very interested in hearing MST's additional thoughts. But I think that maybe one of the best ways to do that would be asking our executive director to engage in some additional conversation with MST. So I'd like to include that as direction moving forward. I think that a loss to service our existing bus service would be absolutely detrimental to the residents that we all serve. I know how critical that bus line is for the folks that I represent who are working in one community and living in a different community. It's literally their ability to get to work every day or get their kids to school. So I'm concerned about what I see on the board with that 30 million or however much that the operational deficit is. So I want to keep that conversation open moving forward. And the other thing that I just want to appreciate the commitment to thinking forward And the surf bus line and connecting Marina and Seaside and hopefully farther south. There's changes hard for folks, but I think we've done such a great job of sort of laying the groundwork to say, we're investing in a future transit system that maybe I will never benefit from, but hopefully my, I'm going to call grandfather of our rail line, Dave, but maybe my grandkids will be able to benefit. We're going a couple generations out here. But if we don't make if we don't lay out that vision now, we're never going to get there. So I just want to, I appreciate everyone that's room. Like we've dealt with some pretty big challenging issues, and I just really, really value the civil dialogue that's taking place here today. Thank you.
There's a turn one more.
I'm gonna come to you, but we did have a request for the continuing dialogue, but
I just want to clarify the motion then. My motion is to approve allocating a 50-50 split of Senate Bill 125 transit and zero emissions between bus and rail transit projects. Direct staff, this is for direct staff to evaluate and recommend potential changes to SB 125 programming annually when updating the integrated funding strategy, or more frequently if grant funding opportunities arise, and approve increasing the Measure X funding share for the Surf Busway project by a total of $9.2 million, contingent upon a 50-50 split of SB 125 funds between the transportation and MSD.
And I think that
Yeah.
more frequently would allow the conversation to continue.
And if we need to make changes, I mean, I want that conversation to be like an open, active dialogue.
On the question, you want to go?
I had final comment.
Let me go to Marianne first, then you, and then.
Thank you. And I concur with all the comments made here today. I did want to just make a statement that regarding SURF and its importance to the community, that 70% of the line 20 SURF boardings will occur between Monterey and Marina, greatly reducing the traffic on Highway 1. And that MST estimates that 69% of people live within a 10-minute walk, half a mile to the bus stop serving the line 20 and serve, and are considered underrepresented, non-white or Latinx. 13% live in poverty, 13% are 65 years of age or older, and 10% lives with disabilities. So I did want to say that looking at it through MST's view, because I sit on the board, that the split doesn't offset the MST's projected operating deficit over the next several years, which was my belief was a primary intent of the SB 125 funding. Sustained operating deficits projected by MSD, if not addressed, will result in MSD reducing service frequency, span of service throughout Monterey County, the city of Salinas and South County, and other unincorporated areas. And the line 24, Carmel Valley, and the new line 59 between Salinas and Gilroy will be discontinued. I just wanted to. Thank you.
Chair. I spoke to the staff report. May I speak to the motion?
Well, I'll come back.
Thank you.
So I just, earlier I thought we were on questions, so I didn't want to give my comments, but given where we are and the conversation that has occurred, I think it's important to share my perspective. And I want to thank Wendy for her comments about the civil nature of the discussion. I think that's critically important. I also want to thank her for a comment she made yesterday, which really stuck with me, as I reread this report in preparation for today. And that was that it's rare that we get dollars for transformation. We often look at keeping what we have, but we don't get opportunities in our low-income communities to find that real transformative investment that brings long-term change. And this is one of those opportunities for our communities, Pajaro and Southern Monterey County. If you don't have that shot to create the plan to be in line for when the dollars eventually come down, you never get to hear the term shovel ready to go. The next question, it's about our entire region as we look at these as variables we talked about. It's about those communities who've not seen the investment like Poplar that we heard for hours yesterday about the challenges they're continuing to face. This opens worlds of opportunity for our communities. It creates true opportunity for everyone in Monterey County by opening these avenues. So when we think about the long-term impact, yes, this is that opportunity for us to bring transformative change to our communities. Or we can choose to say, well, we could put more money into where we've been putting it and hope things change someday. Or we can put the dollars there now and make sure that we invest in what we have, but also in the future. It's a key question for us. It is a political decision, and we will be judged by our communities over where we do and don't invest these monies. But at the end of the day, I think there's great compromise here, especially Measure X. I'm one of those people who's held on to the stretch of dollars every time they get brought up. I say, well, what is our policy position? How are we making decisions on these overages? I'm not finding that extra 9.2. I agree, surface support. I agree with the need to make these investments. But if we believe these are the last dollars that will ever come in grant form or any other way to help MST and to continue systems, then we're not there. We're not in the same room. And so big picture, this I think is fair. And it sets today up for success and tomorrow up for success. And that's what our communities deserve. Looking beyond today and tomorrow for future generations, for my kids. I'm gonna go a little shorter, not grandkids, I'm gonna go with my kids.
More optimistic than I am.
I know, but it's what our communities deserve, so I hope we can come together.
Right, Carl, certainly. So there's three tranches of money that we're considering here that are both provided from SB 125 and through Measure X. There's $7.7 million of shared transit that is MST is the only one running zero emission buses in this county, so it makes sense that funding from MST. There's $44.2 million of TIRCP money, which is the money that can be used for a variety of eligible projects. The primary intent of the legislature was, though, to fund operating deficits and increase ridership. And then there's the Measure X money, which can be flexed to the SURF and then be freed up as otherwise ineligible for rail projects. So I think that's great that TAMC staff has been creative enough to identify them. A alternative that MST would like to be considered is $7.7 million of the total $61.185 million available. $7.7 million from the zero emission bus go to MST, which seems to make sense. $29.1 million to offset MST's projected operating deficit based on our adopted budget, which meets the overarching legislative intent, and the $9.2 million, with the $9.2 million coming to MST being flexed into the SURF project and being flexed into the rail projects. As this results in about $46 million to MST for the work that's been done from MST and the transit operators and getting SB 125 passed, with $15 million going to TAMC for its rail projects, which is not nothing, and it is something that is for the most part for TAMC has found money. This wasn't something that was even considered in as late as past August. So that comes out to about a 75%, 25% split between MST and TAMC. It funds significantly TAMC's rail projects, and it significantly meets the legislative intent of SB 125. So that is the compromise position that MST would bring forward and ask to be considered.
Thank you, Carl. At this time, I'll go to the public. Is there any member of the public who will speak on this item? I do know that we have a statement from Chair Velasquez.
Yes, thank you. I just would this be the time?
Yes.
This is again
public comment.
Public comment on behalf of Anna Velasquez. Letting you know. Okay, should be about 2.5 minutes. As we consider the allocation of these dollars today, it's critical that we first review, one, how we in Monterey County came to be presented with $52.5 million in one-time transit funding from the state, and two, the intended uses for this funding. This funding is our region's share of a $5.1 billion statewide transit funding package that itself is comprised of two components: $4 billion for the transit intercity rail program, that's the TIRCP, and $1 billion for zero emission technologies. As some of you may recall, this funding wasn't insured as recently as this summer. That's because in January, Governor Newsom proposed reducing the $4 billion investment in TIRCP to $2 billion, and there was no discussion of providing additional funding to transit. The legislature ultimately approved the $5.1 billion and provided guidance and flexibility to regions to use this funding for operations in response to the advocacy of the California transit agencies, including MST, led by the California Transit Association, and that was organized by addressing this quote, transit fiscal cliff, end quote. The association specifically advocated in the state capital for restoring $4 billion investment in TIRCP and providing the regions with the ability to flex this money to meet the 5-year operations needs of California transit agencies. The advocacy was very public, taking place in a series of legislative hearings with Transit Association's executive director testifying before the Assembly and Senate, the press conferences with Senator Wiener of San Francisco, where the senator and the association stakeholders from across the state warned of devastating transit service cuts, coalition letters, advocacy campaigns, and engagement which the state, regional, and local press elevated the importance of this to be addressed by the legislature. Put it plainly, without the transit operators and their association, the voice of Senator Wiener in the legislature, we wouldn't be having this discussion today about even allocating this $52.5 million. The intent for this money couldn't be clearer from the statute. Highlights of the intent are as follows: provide one-time multi-year bridge funding for transit operators to address operational costs until long-term transit sustainability solutions are identified. Assist transit operators in preventing service cuts and increasing ridership. Prioritize the availability of transit for riders who are transit dependent. Prioritize transit agencies representing a significant percentage of the region's ridership. In fact, TAMC is required to submit a financial plan that certifies that it is making investments consistent with this intent. Once these needs and intents are met, regions may spend this money on capital projects, which yes, can include the pre-construction activities that are being contemplated for the rail stations in the Salinas Valley. That said, pre-construction activities have historically taken a backseat to investments in capital projects like the ones that has been presented. TIRCP has had 6 funding cycles to date, and it's only the most recent funding cycle that pre-construction activities were even eligible to receive funding. And even then, the state capped total investments on pre-construction activities to 5% of the total funding.
So I hate to do this too, Carl, but
okay,
public members.
There you go. That I had one more bullet. I'm good. Thanks.
Knock it out quick.
Today we're presented with a proposal that that doesn't comply completely with statutory intent. Instead, it proposes to fund pre-construction costs not with 5% that's historically been allowed, but with 50% of state funding for construction. That concludes the comments. Thank you.
Is there any other members of the public who like to speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any other members of the public who like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none, we bring this back to the board. We do have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? One against? Any abstain? Motion passes, item closed. Thank you everyone for the great discussion. We'll now move on to item number 6. Receive reports from our transportation providers. Caltrans.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, there you
Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Apologize for not being able to be there in person. My name is Orchid Monroy Ochoa, and I am acting for Scotty, who was unable to attend the board today. One of the announcements that I have is that a total of $53 million is available for transportation planning projects statewide. The Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant applications due date is coming around the corner. Unfortunately, it's going to interfere a little bit with the holidays, but the due date is January 18th, 2024 by 5 p.m. Caltrans has conducted a couple of virtual grant application workshops in the fall. One was in October and one was in November. But if you would like to coordinate with our District 5 liaison, which would be Jenna Shedson, she will be able to answer any questions that you may have on developing a competitive grant, or if you would like to coordinate preliminary review for a grant prior to submitting it on January 18th, we are able to do that as long as you give us a little bit of time to review. A couple of weeks is suggested, but I know that's also like around the holidays. So January 18th as a reminder, and anything that District 5 could do to support, let us know. Please reach out to Jenna Shedson or myself. Also, with the winter weather fast approaching, please make sure to follow us on social media and check Quick Maps for any of the latest Caltrans news on road conditions. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, Orchard. We've always appreciated Caltrans for being at our meetings as well. It's great partnership. All right, Monterey Peninsula Airport.
Hi, Carl Miller here. Nothing new to report except we have started our deconstruction of the fire ARF station, which will begin our terminal project. So first we'll go on the ramp, the infrastructure, and then eventually the new terminal.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions from the board? Right, Monterey City Transit. Yes, we don't know Carl Sidoric.
Yeah, we haven't heard enough from you yet. Okay. I just wanted to announce on Tuesday, the 12th at 5:30, MST will be hosting a meeting in Marina.
Marina Library.
At the Marina Library, thank you, to discuss landscaping, tree replacement, beautification plans related to our permitting requirements in Marina for the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit. Again, that's Tuesday, the 12th, 5:30 p.m. at the Marina Library. Talk about beautification. Thanks.
And that will be the Surf project that is now fully funded.
It absolutely, well, yes, will be. Thank you.
Any questions? I'm sorry I had to throw that in. But of course. No, I was very frustrated to hear that after all the work he did to get fully funded, and then the next cost came in with that increase. So Monterey Air Resource District. No one? All right, reports on meetings attended by board members and transportation agency expense.
I'm not aware of any.
Right, executive director's report.
All right, I would start off by congratulating Yannicka Strauss for being promoted to associate transportation planner. So congratulations. Continues to do fantastic work for the agency. Also want to note that last month on the 16th, I had an opportunity with the other executive directors of transportation agencies and Assembly Member Rivas's, the 29th district, to sit down with him and his policy director, Julius McIntyre, for 2 hours and do a presentation on our region and our needs and how it reflects that are the importance of various legislative issues. It's a pretty rare opportunity to sit down for 2 hours with the Assembly Speaker. So I was very thankful that they allowed us to do that and set it up. And then the next day, I was able to give Julius McIntyre an hour and a half driving tour showing our projects. So that's really amazing quality time that I had the opportunity to talk with them about our needs and explain why Monterey County is unique. And just an anecdote. We were driving along between Castroville and Salinas on 183, and a produce truck hauling celery in from the fields dropped its load across the road from us, and literally I had to swerve to miss boxes of celery. And it was a great example of the difference between our area and San Jose and LA, and why we're unique. So it's pretty well, yeah, good timing.
Pick some up.
Yeah,
I give it back.
yeah.
That's how they made the turkey stuffing with.
Yeah, we pull out all the stuff to make our point.
Good setup.
Last Saturday, had Team TAMC was down in King City. We had a ribbon cutting for the traffic guard in King City. It was one of 13 that are now in place. It was really exciting. Have a community event where kids got to experience traffic guard for the first time. The Greenfield Community Science Project was doing bike repairs and giving away bikes. It was a real fun event to celebrate the community. This afternoon from 3 to 7 at Monterey Conference Center is the third public meeting for the Highway 68 corridor draft EIR. So opportunity for the public to come in and learn more about the project. So please join us if you're interested. And then this Friday at 9 a.m. we have a US 101 Spence Road Auxiliary Lane ribbon cutting with Congressman Panetta. Congressmember Lofgren was originally scheduled, but we just got notice she's not gonna be able to attend. But Jimmy Panetta will be there with us, and our board chair and Supervisor Lopez will also be there to celebrate this interim fix along the corridor, our first step towards the bigger 101 South of Salinas project. And then finally, I'll wrap up with reminders that the TAMC office is closed to the public starting December 25th and will be returning January 2nd. And that TAMC committees, including the rail policy and the executive committee, will be on the second week of January. So it's not directly after New Year's. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to announcements and comments from any agency members on matters that wish to push on future agenda items. Any? All right, with that, we will have a closed session today. It'll be the public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 for the positions of the executive director and agency counsel. Is there any member of the public who can speak on the closed session item? And I'll ask, is there any members of the public that would speak on the closed session item? Hearing and seeing none, thank you everybody for your attendance. We'll now adjourn to our convene to our closed session. Thank you. If we'd like to take a